The third question on the order paper, which is in the name of Assembly Member Jones on the impacts of climate change, asking, are you monitoring climate change research suggesting that the world may warm by more than 2 degrees, and are you reviewing a risk analysis and adaptation actions? And I think this is aimed at the Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the answer is yes, we are. As part of the London Safety Plan, we reviewed the climate change risk to London as a whole. We're also part of the climate change risk assessments being carried out nationally. And what we've seen throughout the country in the last 5 or 6 years is an increase in the national resilience assets that are available to fire and rescue services, things like flooding. There's lots more boats available now. London Fire Brigade has changed its operational capability as a result of that assessment, so we now have a great deal, many more boats available to us. For example, for flooding, we have new equipment coming in, high volume pumps and things to be able to move water around. But the answer is yes, we do. We've assessed that at the higher end of the emissions predictions, and what those assessments have shown, we don't necessarily identify any new types of incidents that we may encounter, but the types of incidents we already occur which could be related to climate change, such as, for example, flooding, we do identify maybe a increased precedence or increased rate of those incidents occurring, and maybe they will take place over a wider area than perhaps they have done previously. But the answer is yes, we do assess all that. I mean, we're also very proactive in terms of what we're doing to reduce our carbon emissions across the whole of London. I think we've seen some significant improvements in LFEPA across the board, actually, in relation to this. One particular issue, if I may, which I'd like to bring up, though, is we do see some issues nationally, and certainly in London we've seen it recently, with regard to things like recycling sites. So the site down in Orpington at the moment, where we've attended many fires down there at the moment, and I think one of the things that we believe is that the legislation that controls the safe and effective use of those sites is lagging maybe slightly behind the commercial interests of people that are involved in actually storing them. So, for example, to take that one site as an example, and without going into too much detail, our ability to actually control the management of that site is actually quite limited. It really relies on the Environment Agency, and even their ability to actually control it in a way which prevents the fires and our attendance there and all the carbon emissions that arise from it is actually quite limited.
Thank you very much for that. I know that you're doing a lot internally, and I think that's great. Have you done any exercises, for example, if we had something like the floods of 2007, I mean, it was chaos elsewhere in Britain. If we had that sort of event again, are you doing exercises to make sure that we can cope? I declare an interest. I have a ground floor flat in Southwark, which is very low lying. So if there are problems and you don't cope with it, I will be on your doorstep.
Or you could get on your boat.
That's another option.
Your boat straight to the front door. There you go.
Yeah, we do. I mean, one of the focuses of the London Resilience Partnership training and exercising programme is very much flooding, and we do exercise our response both at tabletop and actually boots on the ground, as we like to call it, quite regularly, really, in terms of flooding. We also take part in national exercises around flooding as well, because the national resilience arrangements enable resources, fire and rescue service resources that is, to be moved around the country to support the areas in flood. We saw that very much in Gloucestershire with the floods back in 2007, and more recently in Cornwall and Cumbria elsewhere, where London Fire Brigade resources deployed outside of London to assist with the flooding taking place, and the same thing will be able to happen within London.
Thank you. Can I ask Mr Cleverly about the London Resilience Partnership? Because I know that the Mayor's hit his target of river restoration of 15 miles or whatever, but it's my impression that the partnership has sort of short-term targets. Are you beginning to think a bit more long-term?
Well,
that's
thank
not
you.
Criticism.
No, Jenny,
I'm
genuinely very, very pleased you asked that question, because it does highlight one of the completely shared frustrations of the Resilience Partnership. Is our function is to deal with the response-orientated stuff. We have a whole load of very well worked up response plans. But when you start doing that risk analysis and start looking at the risk register, you start identifying things that we as a forum would want to intervene in. And actually, some of the areas where we can say, well, actually, if we could be a bit more proactive, there is a whole avenue of risks that we are currently working up responses for that we'd actually prefer to spend our time, effort and resources avoiding. So risk mitigation rather than risk response is an area that we want to look more into, and some of the climate affected risk, so extreme weather and that kind of stuff are things that there are actions that we would like to take to kind of do a bit more mitigation rather than just response. So I'm very, very pleased, and if you're happy to continue pushing on that, you'll be pushing an open door.
That's brilliant. I mean, presumably there are options for partnership working on storm defences and that sort of thing.
Yeah. The Resilience Partnership doesn't have a statutory footing, and it can't dictate the action to any of its component organisations. But there is a very good working relationship where when organisations recognise things that they could be doing either individually or in partnership, that action is taken. But there is no statutory footing. The Resilience Forum can't dictate to anybody actions that we, even if we collectively feel they're the right things. They tend to happen anyway because they're obviously the right things to do, but there is no statutory footing for that.
Who are you getting, if you're going to look a bit more long term, look at mitigation rather than adaptation or risk management, who are you getting advice from?
Well, one of the big advantages of the forum is that it has around the table basically the experts in the field. We have the Environment Agency, we have representatives from the utility sector, the business sector, charitable sector. So we do plug into a lot of those knowledge bases, so we get information from whoever. In terms of government, we plug into the Cabinet Office and obviously Home Office, Department of Health and the and DCLG through the respective blue light services and into I missed one out.
It's more really about because I think general awareness of climate change isn't that well developed. I mean, that's my impression, sitting here for quite a long time. But for example, the World Bank actually asked the Potsdam Institute to look at the issue of climate change, and they actually think that we're moving much faster towards some real problem areas, and that we're on course for 2 degrees of warming by the late 2030s. That's really close. And you two, well, you might still be in post and you might still be living in London, and this might affect us quite strongly. So I'm saying some expert advice, and I'm afraid I don't include the Environment Agency in that, some expert advice might be timely, just to have somebody along to talk to you about just how it could be experienced in London.
Well, one of the things that's happened, and it's happened through a number of different organisations, so it's happened partially through the Resilience Forum and our Gold Group exercises that we've had, where we've had guest speakers talk to us. Very recently we had, it's lucky because we've got in-house experience as well, but the Deputy Commissioner of the Met spoke about his experience in Cumbria when he had to deal with the Cumbrian floodings and the implications of that. What we're not really, we don't have the capability to, we don't have the time or the resources to, is to do the real big picture kind of change in direction of travel, which is at real governmental level. What we do is we look at what are the current and emerging risks, severe weather, flooding, issues around shelter, evacuation and shelter. These are the kind of things which may be byproducts of the climate. We focus on those rather than, energy production, fossil fuel utilisation. That's too big a picture. So we do deal with the responsive side of things.
But you can, for example, I mean, if we are going to, I haven't got much time left, if we are going to face, for example, more flooding, you could, for example, a lot of officers, brigade officers, go out and talk to people. They could talk to them about things like permeable paving, things, very simple stuff that they can do in their, or not do, to make themselves a bit safer.
And a quick answer to this now, because the Green Group are running out of time.
I mean, there are many things. There are many things. I mean, our firefighters, when they do home fire safety visits, are really good. They're not blinkered. They do talk about fire safety, but they also do talk about a range of other things as well. I'm a little bit cautious, however, of giving them everything, because there's a strong argument for first aid advice. There's a strong argument for healthy eating advice. There are lots of strong arguments. And actually, you know, if we're going to keep them moving and keep them visiting lots and lots of properties, we have to trim their natural exuberance a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Assembly Member Qureshi.
Thank you.